Welcome to our presentation today, Constructing Your Business for Success. I'm really honored and grateful that you decided to come here today and spend some time with me. I speak to a lot of different groups on a lot of different topics, and some of the people who were here yesterday also know that I'm particularly honored that being construction people or related to construction somehow is also very near and dear to me because I'm a general contractor. I have several businesses, but that's one of my businesses where I'm very successful. So it means a lot to me that you guys are also in that field as well. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. If you were here yesterday, you probably heard in my other presentation a lot about who I am, but I was one of those kids that was very mechanical and just loved to take things apart, put them together, fix things, and I was very, very good at that. At an early age, I became really good at fixing cars and then went on to fixing boats. But I also had this early acumen for business. I wanted to make money. And the reason why that happened was my father. You see, when I went to get one of my first real bikes when I was around 8 years old, I went to the bike shop with my dad. And my dad said to me, "Evan, which bike would you like here?" So I go point to the fanciest, nicest bike that's there. And he said to me, he goes, "Well, you can have that one, but the one that I'll buy you is that one," which of course was the beginner model. He goes, "So if you want that nice one, you can have it. What I'll do is I'll lend you the money and you can pay me back. You can wash the car, mow the lawn, take out the garbage, things like that." I said, "I'll take it." So I got my really nice bike, and then I was doing all those things. And after doing that for a while, then back in those days was the CB radio craze. I don't know if anyone is old enough for that, but I wanted a CB. So then I kind of did the same thing to get my CB radio. So then I kind of got to the point where I just wasn't making enough money. Of course, 10, 11, 12 years old, not making enough money. So I needed more things and wanted more things. And then I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, I need to make more money." So he's like, "Well, then find another business that'll make you more money." So at 11 years old, I started my first business, which was washing windows. With my father's help, I put an ad in the paper. I was washing windows. And then what happened was that kind of turned into where I had a bank call me from my ad and said, "Can you clean apartments and townhouses? We have repos and foreclosures that we need cleaned." Well, honestly, I didn't even clean my bedroom, but I said, "Yes, I can do it." And fortunately, it was relatively close to my house. I rode my bike at 11 years old to these townhouses. I never really had to meet the guy from the bank. He just, got his field report back that it was done and clean. And I was cleaning rotten butter and food out of refrigerators, but I was getting $80 for each unit I did that for, which was pretty good back then. And I recruited some of my school friends, and I had them helping me do that. And with that money, I bought a better set of tools, and then I started with my mechanical ability. I was fixing cars. My first car shop was my parents' driveway. And I would have people bring their cars over to my parents' house. When I was 15 years old, I actually had my first employee in the automotive repair business. And at that point, I had bought a van. I rebuilt the engine in the van, and my employee would drive the van around, and we'd go to people's houses, and we would fix their cars and boats. When I was 15, I also got one of those meter-maid carts, which you're allowed to drive with a restricted driver's license, put a utility bed on the back, and had my tools in the back of my little three-wheel scooter that I drove around. And that's how I got started in business. And by the time I graduated high school, I had 5 employees working for me. I had also rented a warehouse, and that was my base of operations, and I had a shop there. My teachers were my clients, as well as a whole bunch of other people that came as recommendations and friends of parents and things like that. When I was working on boats, I was also working on yachts. And I realized that all the systems I was working on in boats and yachts, which was plumbing, electrical, HVAC, fine finishes, flooring, all these things, I realized are the same things that we have in buildings. And my father was an interior designer. So I would see his design jobs where he'd be redoing commercial spaces and residential condos and things like that. And when these walls were open, I'm like, I work on that same stuff on yachts, and it's even easier to work on it right here instead of crawling through bilges. So that's how I became a contractor. And I started doing contracting work and eventually got my general contractor's license and was building my businesses up. And even to this day, I still have my automotive shop and I have my construction business. I built my construction business into a nationwide company because all along I always believed in diversification. I always believed in making sure that there was other possible streams of revenue coming in. I didn't like that whole model of construction, even early on, where you would just bid and bid and bid, and hopefully you're the low bidder and you get the job, and it just didn't sit well with me. So I made sure, like in construction, for example, the biggest part of my construction business, which is the nationwide part, is we do facility maintenance work. So we have clients that have multiple unit locations. And in their multiple unit locations, that would be like chains of retail stores, chains of banks, chains of restaurants. Anything that breaks in their facility, we handle. Their plumbing, their electric, their handyman work, their locks, their glass, anything, all that breaks. No matter what happens to the economy, those things are continue to happen, and if they want to keep their store open, then that's what they're going to do to keep it going. So I always look to have multiple revenue streams that are not that affected by the economy, if at all possible, and that's been part of my success in construction and other businesses as well, being able to adapt. In my personal life, I'll tell you about that a little bit. As I was making money at a young age, I got interested in flying. And I was flying airplanes and flying helicopters at a very young age. And also, I got married, had kids, got divorced, you know how that goes. And by the way, I've got like awesome kids. My kids are, one of them's graduating law school, my other one's in law school, so really super great kids. But I was doing a lot of flying, and that's what was my passion to do in my spare time. And I became very, I got all my different licenses in flying and stuff like that. And in 2001, I was in an airplane crash. And that's how I ended up in the wheelchair. And I was out of work for the better part of a year between being in the hospital and rehab and the things I had to go through to kind of get back to work again. What was interesting is that during that whole time period, I never missed a paycheck. And not only that, a lot of my customers didn't even realize that I was gone for all that time. And the lesson from that is to try to make sure that your business is set up as an enterprise, not as just a company or proprietorship. You want to try to get your business to a point where it will run itself, and it's not a situation where if something happened and you couldn't be there, that your business just stops. So that's something to think about. And it's really important because down the road, if you go to sell your business, the value of a business is not something that requires you to be there. the person that buys your business wants you gone. The business becomes valuable based on what it could do with the infrastructure that's in place without you being there. And I'm going to talk a lot more about business in just a moment, but some of the things that I also do in my personal life is I'm involved in a lot of different sports and hobbies. I'm a wheelchair tennis player, and I fly my own airplane with hand controls that I designed and built and had FAA certified. I have a boat that I built a special lift for that gets me on and off the boat. I have a special bike that I ride that's a hand cycle, you propel it by hand. And I also have a specialized gym that I work out in. In community service, I'm involved in a bunch of different Chamber of Commerce's and boards. I'm a mentor to other disabled people. I take disabled kids for airplane rides. So I do a lot of things also in my personal life. And my businesses that I currently have is my automotive business, my construction business, where I kind of told you what I do nationwide, and on the local level, I do the more traditional kind of remodeling and, you know, kitchens, bathrooms, commercial spaces, things like that. And the so with my businesses and with my hobbies and with all that stuff, there's one other important thing I want to talk about, and that is opportunity. Because after I had this accident, I saw other opportunities that allowed me to expand my businesses even more. What happened was I was buying medical equipment now, and I was just not being treated well by the vendors that were selling me medical equipment. What I did was I became a medical equipment dealer because I felt I could do a better job. And then I saw another need. I saw that people with disabilities need modified vehicles. So with my mechanical business already in place, I've made a vehicle modification business. And then I saw that people with disabilities need to have their homes and businesses made accessible. So being a general contractor, I added another component where we specialize in modifications of properties for disability access. So keep in mind that you should always be looking for opportunities. Opportunities are out there, but you have to look for them. And even in the face of a bad situation, there's still opportunities out there to be had. You might think, how do you do all this, and how do you have the time and the money and all this stuff to do it? It comes back again to what I was saying about having a business enterprise. And in order to have a business enterprise, there's certain things that must be in place in your business. You see, a business has a lot of different components, and you need to focus on those components individually and improve them to get to that point of the enterprise. I learned a lot of this the hard way, as you can probably imagine. Starting as young as I started with minimal knowledge, I had a lot of help from my father, who is a very hard-working, one-man band type of guy. I mean, you know, he types his invoices, he sells his jobs, he's drawing the plans. I mean, he does everything himself. And what I learned is that that's really not what I wanted to do. So I took the expertise that he has in being this, you know, hard-working business guy, but I took it a whole step further by making it an enterprise. And that's really what you really want to look for. And with all the things I learned the hard way and things that cost me a lot of money along the way, I put together a business performance system called the Piper Business Performance System. And we look at 11 different factors of a business. And I'm going to talk to you about this, and really, this could be a multi-day workshop, so I'm going to go very quickly. If you ever heard the term drinking from a fire hose, that's about what's going to happen here. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of it, but I will be available afterwards. I could talk more about it afterwards, and if you needed more information later, let me know. But I want to go through, and with me, I try to attend a lot of conferences, as many as I can, because I always pick up something. And if you can leave here today with even one little nugget that could make a difference, it's all worthwhile. So I'll be saying a lot of words for quite a while, but it's just that one thing that strikes you that is going to make all the difference in the world. It could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars to that one little thing. Let me start with the first system we have, which is the Piper profit system. What we want to do is increase profitability in our business as much as possible. By doing that, the first thing we want to do is find our hidden profits. In our business, there's other ways to make more money. So without increasing our infrastructure, we want to increase our profits. And the way to do that is to look for things. And just to give you a quick example, it might be that if you have an auto repair business, you add a car wash component to it. You already have the infrastructure there for it, and you're going to just create a whole lot more money by doing that. If you have a restaurant that's a eat-in type restaurant, and you add a delivery service to it, right there without changing your infrastructure, you could double or triple the business that you do. So I want to just get you thinking along those lines, and all these things I'm going to talk about are just to think along those lines. Another thing is expense reduction. We don't really pay attention to the money that we spend a lot of times. And things just kind of happen to us where we don't even realize what we're doing. So the whole idea with expense reduction is to increase our profitability without changing our standard operating procedures. So this is a way to make more money without even changing the way we do business. Some perfect examples are telecommunications. A lot of times, we have the same telecommunications deal going on that we've had for the last 10 or 20 years. And things have changed in technology. There's VoIP now, and there's a whole lot of other opportunities in telecommunications where you can save a lot of money. Insurance is a big thing. Our insurance agents are lazy. They just want to renew you, and you just usually just pay the renewal. Well, if you shop that out and really look at the coverages you need, look at the other opportunities of other bids, you can save a lot of money. So that's kind of the idea of expense reduction. There's probably 50 or 100 areas in a business that you could look at where you can really make a lot more profit by saving money. Another thing is expense conversion. And in expense conversion, the idea is to take your fixed expenses and make them a variable expense. So it's kind of something that if, let's say, you have an employee on salary, you might be able to restructure that and have them on commission. So you're really only paying them for what they're producing, not just paying them for being there. Another thing might be warehousing. You may be renting a whole lot of warehouse space that you're not using all the time. It may be less expensive to go to a outsourced facility where you can just get the space you need. Like sometimes we'll have a big project happen. We'll take another warehouse bay on so we could store the materials for that one project. That project ends. We never get rid of the warehouse. Next thing we know, we're parking an extra car or leaving stuff in there, and that becomes a big overhead burden for us. And all those burdens come out of our pocket. They come out of our paycheck at the end of the day. And the other thing also would be converting variable expenses into fixed expenses. So you're going to do the reverse, where a good example is mostly professional services. Instead of having your lawyer or your accountant that you're paying them $500 an hour, you might negotiate a retainer fee where it's a set amount, and with that, you can get a better deal based on the volume. Another thing is expense consolidation. With that, it might be getting like a corporate plan for your cell phones. It might be when you're doing marketing, instead of buying your different services in different places, getting them all bundled together and getting a better deal that way. But the thing really to think about with all this is when you're paying a bill, you're paying $1,000 of expenses, you've got to do, depending upon your margin, but if you're like a 25% margin, you've got to do $4,000 worth of business to pay $1,000 worth of bills. So really the impact of saving $1,000 keeps you from having to sell $4,000 worth of work. So just look at it from that perspective also. The next thing is the Piper Mindset System. Probably one of the most important things that you will approach in being successful. And if you were here yesterday, I really spoke a whole lot about mindset. But without having a successful mindset, you can never be successful. You've got to be willing to change. You've got to be willing to modify your thinking. And of course, there's a whole lot about that I can't really get into with all the time today. But what's really important to do is to make sure that limiting beliefs are eliminated. You see, what happens is that we tell ourselves these stories about what we can't do and why we can't do it. That we're not smart enough, or we're too old, or we're not attractive enough. All these things we tell ourselves, and they're just simply not true. They're stories that we're making up in our head, and we make up stories that keep us from being successful, not only in our business, but also in our personal life. We need to remove those things so that we have that opportunity to grow. Another very important thing is having the right attitude. We must be positive. We must have a positive attitude. And one thing is that we want to get up in the morning, we want to feel invigorated, we want to feel excited about doing what we need to do, about doing our work. If you get up and you're like this is just a drudgery, you're not going to be able to do well. But if you get up and you're excited about what you're going to do, you're going to do great with it. And not only that, by putting off a positive aura, people are going to want to be around you. And that goes for clients, and that also goes for employees. And going back to the enterprise model that I'm talking about, the enterprise model doesn't happen by yourself. The enterprise model happens with a team. The way to keep a team around you is by having them like you, because then they're going to want to go above and beyond for you. So that positivity is extremely important. So I hope you can see how mindset is really key. If nothing else today, take away the mindset modification piece of this, please. The Piper Business Planning System has to do with creating a business plan. The first thing is looking at your big picture, your situational assessment, which has to do with the environment, has to do with the economy, has to do with politics, just the big picture things that may have an effect on your business. Kind of the way I spoke before about how I've had my business diversified so that I can kind of hedge the economy. Well, the way that I know about that is by paying attention to the big picture situation. Another thing in your business is doing a SWOT analysis. That's looking at your strengths, looking at your weaknesses, looking at the opportunities, and looking at the threats. And integrating all those things into your business plan. When you're making a business plan of where do you want to go with your business, by looking at where you're strong, that's where you want to kind of put more focus, and you want to stay away from the areas where you're weak. And of course, I spoke about opportunity, and of course, when there's threats out there to you, you want to mitigate those threats. And really, the best way to mitigate a threat is to do a better job. That's really, at the end of the day, the best way to mitigate a threat, because it's no longer a threat after that. And you want to create a strategic marketing plan. A strategic marketing plan is thinking out how you're going to market your business from the big picture. Instead of just going and buying a newspaper ad here and doing a Facebook ad here and just doing these ragtag type of tactics, it's having a plan of how you're going to go do what you're going to. We're going to talk about marketing a little bit more in a moment, but by having the strategic marketing plan, by having that in place, you'll implement it later by the marketing system that we'll talk about. Next is the Piper's goal system. And just when it comes to goals, because it's really important to have goals in place. You need to know where you're going. If you're going to be successful, you have to have a map. You have to have a plan. Like, we have an architect here. If we're going to build a building, we need our architect to draw us a nice plan so we know where we're going to go and what our building is going to look like. If we just start ordering block and concrete and putting it together, you know what's going to happen. We've been behind those jobs before. Your goals need to be what we call SMART. Goal needs to be specific. It needs to be measurable so that we know how we're performing with it. It needs to be attainable. If you set a goal that's unattainable, then it's just going to become a disappointment. Your goals need to be realistic, and they need to have time bound. And the time bound part of the goal is really of extreme importance because it's all about getting things done in a certain period of time. Time is something that you can't control. It runs away from you. So if you have it set that you want to create something by a certain time and you go for that time limit, it's extremely important when you're doing goals. Goals really come in two ways. They come long-term and they come short-term. In the long-term goal, it's usually like the 3 to 5 year type of thing. It's the things that you want to see happen over the long range. And they usually fall into place with the business plan that you make. So you kind of make the business plan, and then part of the implementation is having these goals to create what you want to do with the business plan. And then there's short-term goals, which are usually these quick result, 30-day, 90 days, really less than a year as a general rule. And if you set those short-term goals up right, they'll give you like some quick bang for the buck, and they'll also be a stepping stone towards those longer-term goals. So goal planning in itself is a complicated thing, but if you sit down and plan the goals and take the time to do it right, then when you go to implement them, you've got a plan that's going to work. The next thing is the hyper-marketing system, which is really the implementation process for the strategic marketing plan. And what we want to do is we want to bring that strategic marketing plan to fruition by having the right staff in place. And the other thing is the tactics. It's making sure that we identify the right tactic. And the difference between a strategy and a tactic is the tactic is the actual thing that you do, be it that newspaper ad, that magazine ad, that Facebook ad, that email campaign. Those are all tactics. The strategy is how you do those tactics. Tactics alone are not really that valuable because they're not well thought out. If a tactic is part of a strategy, then it's powerful. So don't just try these tactics here and there because they generally don't work. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment. Because what we overlook in business is a lot of times we just take whatever business comes and we're happy to have the business. But we really need to look at who our ideal target market is or who our ideal client is. The tighter we can hone in on that, the more successful we're going to be, because we know we're going to the person that's going to most benefit, appreciate, and pay for our specific areas of expertise. So the more we can hone in, the better off we are on that. So we need to identify who that client is. We need to understand the demographic of that client. And then we create what's called an avatar, which is really the term used to understand exactly who our ideal client is. Now, once we know our avatar and we know our ideal client, the idea is how do we get our message to them? And that is by going through the appropriate marketing channels. And that kind of comes through the strategic marketing plan, but by reaching the avatar, we want to know where our avatar, where our ideal client hangs out and how we can get to them. So if we find that that particular person that we're trying to get to typically would be hanging out in sports bars on the weekend, then we might want to gear our marketing to the weekend sports bar because that's where we know we're going to find the person we're looking for. Of course, that's just one example out of a lot of different things, but that's the way that I recommend that you think when it comes to marketing. Find out who you really want to get to and find out the best way to get to those people. And the last thing is understanding that doing a great job or having a great quality product is great, but it's not everything. What's as important is the presentation of the product. You can have a product or service that is slightly off key from being the best, but if it's packaged the right way, it will sell and it'll be appreciated. So whatever it is that you do, be it a product or a service, make sure that the way that you have that product perceived by clients, that it looks right. If it's a service, make sure when you go to present that service to somebody that you look right to that person. Next is the sales and customer service system. And the first thing is understanding the value of a client. When you go through that whole marketing process, it's expensive. The cost of getting a client is expensive because you're going to spend a lot of money on all this advertising and all the things you're going to do to get the client. And of course, you're going to have those few clients that come back from there. You want to retain that client because of the cost that it would take to replace them again. So you want to do certain things to make sure that, and we're going to talk about what to do to try to help retain the customer. The other thing is there's the old adage that says if you have a happy customer, they might tell 1 or 2 people. If you have an unhappy customer, they may tell 20 people. Well, today, it's even a little bit more different. With social media, they're not going to just tell 20 people like in the old days. They will tell the whole world. So it's really important to make sure that you do whatever you possibly can do to keep your clients happy. And really, there's no reason why you shouldn't. And believe me, I understand because I know firsthand there's some clients that are extremely, extremely difficult. But you have to just deal with them and get through them in a nice way and lose them in a nice way because they're going to cost you money, but you still need to make sure the relationship ends nicely. And the next thing is going back to keeping the customer, and that would be with customer satisfaction. Something that I kind of learned from the hospitality business is to deliver more than what's expected. You know, if you ever think about, you go to a hotel and you're expecting a hotel room, and then you end up seeing in the room there's free bottles of water, or a piece of chocolate on the pillow, or just that type of thing, you're like, wow, you weren't expecting that, and you just have this whole great feeling. So if you apply exceeding the customer's expectation to what you do, it will make a big difference in keeping a loyal customer and keeping them coming back. And the other thing is that if you take care of them the right way, price is not the main thing they're looking at. Customers are looking for people that they know, like, and trust, and that they want to do business with. If it's the customer that's only looking for price, they're probably not the customer you really want. When you create that avatar, you don't want that to be what's in their avatar. And the other thing is expectation management. I spend a lot of time making sure that the expectations are clear to the customer, because if you leave that vague, you leave yourself open for a lot of problems. I recently did a remodeling job, and the client said they wanted to live in the home while we redid 3 bathrooms and a kitchen and all the floors in the home. This is not a good idea. This customer insisted on it. I made sure that I went to their home and had a special meeting with them and told them that these are the ugly things that can happen. You know, you're gonna see, if my guy's late 10 minutes one day, you're gonna see that. If you weren't living here, you would never know the difference. If they don't sweep up at the end of the day by accident, you're gonna be living in that dust mess. And You have to create the expectation so that they know what happens, because if not, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And very, very important is communication. Maintaining an open line of communication. Really, for everything in the world, even wars, it usually comes down to communication. So if you make sure that you have extremely good communication with a client, and one thing I've learned with that is even if it's bad news, call them and give them the bad news. Don't avoid them when you have bad news to deliver, because sooner or later you're going to have to face them, and it's going to be even worse. It's better if you call them up, make a little joke, tell them I got some good news and some bad news, or however you need to do it, but very, very important. Another thing, when it comes to selling, a lot of times we sell all wrong. You see, we sell our product or we sell our service, but what we need to do is focus on selling the solution. We need to find out what our client really needs, what their problem is, what keeps them up at night. If we figure that out and we sell them the solution to their problem, and we sell them the solution to what keeps them up at night, they're going to buy it. That's what they really want. They don't really care that your product is beautiful and you call it the best, because that's what everybody does. Everybody tells you their product's the best. But if you tell them how you're going to solve their problem, then you will sell it to them, and cost won't be that important either. The next thing, once you do all these other things, is you're going to want to know how much money you're making, because the truth is that a lot of us, the way we know if we're making money or not is by if our bank account is overdrawn or not. And that's not the way to operate a business, by knowing what your bank account's doing, because that's not taking into consideration a whole lot of other things, like how much money you owe, how much money is owed to you. There's just a whole lot of other things. So the first thing is to have an appropriate accounting system. Usually they're hardware or software based, sometimes they're cloud based, something even like QuickBooks, but an accounting system that will generate reports, financial management reports, because the idea is to get this information, because without this information, as we call it in flying and aviation, flying blind. We don't want to fly blind. So with the system, we want to make sure that we obtain the relevant reports to know where our business is and what we have to do to mitigate it. The main thing that comes out of these accounting systems is a financial statement, which includes an income statement, a balance sheet, and a statement of cash flows. And you can create all these custom reports. So any type of thing you want to look at sales during a period, you want to look at all these different things, you can create reports based on certain periods of time or based on certain criteria, and you want to have those reports. We don't spend enough time paying attention to our money. And at the end of the day, the main reason we work, yes, we want to serve our client, yes, we want to do the right thing, but we're here to make money. And if we don't pay attention to our money, we're not going to make money. And once you have these wonderful reports, you have to interpret the reports. Sometimes you need to get, for at least the first couple times, some expert help. You might need your accountant or an advisor or a consultant to help you see what these reports really mean and what you need to do based on the good or the bad of the reports to take the necessary operational action. Next is the employee management system. And talking about an enterprise again, an enterprise doesn't happen without employees. So the first thing is getting the right employees into your business. There's a recruitment process. So based on what type of employee you're looking for would be dependent on where you would recruit them from. Either you might get an outside recruiting firm, you might get just place ads. But based on what that position is, would depend upon how you get that employee. Once you find the employee, you need to vet them pretty well, because taking on the wrong employee is usually an expensive thing for the company. You don't usually know till a month or two down the road, and by that time you spent a lot of money and wasted a lot of time on productivity with the wrong employee. And in order to try to make sure you have the successful employee, is you want to create an onboarding process. You want to make sure that the employee or the new hire has the right technical training and background to do what needs to be done and to integrate into your business, and they need to have hands-on or mentoring type training. You need to put them with another employee that can help get them to do what they need to do in the quickest possible fashion. And that other employee who's the mentor will also give you feedback on how that new employee is doing as well. When it comes to having that good employee and keeping that good employee, of course, compensation is something that's going to make them stay. That's kind of a key thing to make employees stay. Making sure that the pay is competitive and that the benefits are competitive. And also, to what I see is to not just have the employee be someone that's just here for the money. Like, it shouldn't just be all about the money. So I believe in elevating your employees, because by elevating your employees, you're going to get more back for your company. And by creating professional development opportunities for your employees, it's going to be a win-win for everybody. And it's going to make them feel like this company cares about me, and they're going to want to stay, and it's not all going to be about that dollar. With all that, we have to make sure we know how important it is to have an employee, especially if we're trying to get to that enterprise model. Because without our employees, we don't have an enterprise. Without our employees, we're a one-man band, and with the one-man band, we're extremely limited. So if you understand that your employees are the face of the business, your employees are what really dictates your free time, your success, and your wealth. By keeping that in mind and treating employees in that fashion, it'll be a lot better situation for everybody. And the next thing is vendor management. Especially in construction, we deal a lot with vendors. We call them subcontractors generally. But it also could be material suppliers. And really, the same way that employees have a large effect on our business, so do our subcontractors. See, our subcontractors can really make us or break us, because they're really the face of the business. If they do a good job, then the client's going to think we're awesome. If they do a bad job, it's going to reflect back on us. So all our vendors, be it material vendors, be it labor vendors, we want to make sure that we have the proper people doing the job. And how do we do that? We want to look at some key things, like their reliability. What is their reliability? How are they going to perform for us? Another thing is, where are they physically located? If we're doing a job in Orlando and they're based in Miami, there most likely is going to be issues with that. And the issues are going to be that they're not going to be able to service your client the way you want them to service it because of the geographical problem. And there's going to be a pricing problem, because you know they have to account for all that travel in doing that. So keeping all that in mind, and what I know, especially from construction, is that your subcontractors and your vendors, be it materials or labor, they are what sets your prices. Because as a contractor, what your cost of materials or your cost of labor is how you're going to set your price. So if you're not getting competitive pricing from your vendors, your pricing to your clients is going to be excessive as well. And much the same as I was talking about creating expectations with a client, the same thing goes with a vendor. Make sure that your vendors are very clear what the expectations are, what you're looking for them to do. So make sure that that's in communication as well. You can see there's a couple key things that keep coming along here: expectations, communications, things like that. And the next system is the Piper Technology System. All of us have computers in our businesses. If we don't, we have a problem. We want to make sure that we have an adequate computer system. We want to make sure that our system is up to date for what we're doing. We don't want our software or hardware to be slowing down our process. We don't want our employees to be waiting for something to keep refreshing, or because we're paying them to do that. Buying new hardware is a lot cheaper than paying an employee to watch a circle go around on a machine. So we need to make sure that we have the latest software that is most applicable for what we do and the best equipment for that. Another thing is, when we're buying software, we want to try to buy software that's off the shelf. It's going to have better support from the manufacturer instead of getting that computer whiz person to do a custom program for you. Because as soon as he goes away, then it's going to be a problem because you're going to be starting all over again. And compliance issues with computers and software really is more in the medical field with privacy and stuff, not so much in construction unless you're doing healthcare construction. Another thing is system security. There's endpoint security, which is your machines that are actually on your desks. They need to have the proper antivirus software. And there's perimeter security, which are your firewalls, your routers, and things like that. But the most important thing when it comes to computers is user education. You need to have a program so that you don't have someone in the office get an email and click on the wrong attachment and take your whole system down with a virus, because it can happen very easily, and by doing things like that, you circumvent all the virus protection software and everything. So user education is key when it comes to that. The next thing is backup. You must have a backup. Usually when I ask people, when's the last time you backed up your system, I hear scary answers. Sometimes I even scare myself with my own answer. So the thing is that you need to make your backup a regular thing, because data loss is really a big hassle. If you've never had it happen to you, you don't want it to. And by doing your backups regularly, it won't be a problem. A lot of ways to do backups are a redundant environment, which means a whole other computer server in an off your location that's always up to date. It runs in tandem with your server. That means that you have constant, immediate switchover capability. We might not need those things in our business because it's expensive. There are companies that can't afford even 1 minute of downtime, so they have that and they pay for it. But in our case, having something like a cloud backup system or some other type of drives that we can remove from the premises are usually adequate, but we have to have a plan in place to make that happen. And last is the Piper Independence System. The reason that we work our whole career is so that our life can be easier when we want to stop working so hard. By putting our plans in place and thinking about them while we're working, we'll be able to achieve it. The worst thing to do is start thinking about how you're going to retire when you're ready to retire. You need to start thinking about how you're going to retire when you have no plans of retiring. Because if you wait till you're ready to retire, it's going to be too late. The first thing is in your business, especially when you have that enterprise going, you need to have a succession plan. You need to know that if something happens to you, either you no longer are going to work or something happens where you can't work, that there's a plan in place on how your business is going to continue. The other thing is preparing your business for future sale. That has to happen every single day. Don't wait till you're ready to sell your business, because once again, it's going to be too late. there's certain factors that people look at when they buy businesses. You need to be aware of what those factors are, and you need to make sure your business is planned and operated according to that, so you're always ready to sell your business at any given time. Because as the environment changes, what you do can overnight be something that a big company says, I need that. Or a big company sees you as a threat, and I gotta buy them out to get them, either they want you on board for your talent, or they want to get you out of their way, or they want your customer base. But that can happen when you least expect it. The first thing they're gonna do when they go to buy your business is look at certain things. They're gonna do their due diligence process. And they're gonna look at your books, and they're gonna look at your team. They're gonna look at a whole bunch of things, and you need to have that in place while you're operating, not doing it when you're thinking of selling it right now or someone's making you an offer. Because the offer will be lower if you don't have that stuff in place. And retirement and future planning. One thing is, there's financial hazards that we all have in life, which has to do with dying too soon, or living too long, or getting sick or disabled, or losing property, or being sued. Those are things that are usually mitigated by insurance. So by working with the right insurance broker, you can make sure that you protect yourself so that if one of those things happen, your life is not devastated, that you're protected. And also, when it comes to retirement planning, you have to have the right retirement planning in place. And when you fund those retirement plans, it needs to be considered an additional expense. The same way that you have to pay your electric bill or your cell phone bill or whatever it is, you cannot leave your retirement planning to excess money that you have around. If you are saying, yeah, when I have extra money, I'll do some retirement planning, you are doing yourself the biggest disservice ever. You see, if your electric bill needs to be paid, somehow, some way, you find the money to pay that bill. If your rent needs to be paid, you find the money to do it. If your retirement planning is another expense and you treat it like that, you will find the money to fund your retirement. And when you need to take advantage of that, it will be there for you. Extremely important, because most of us overlook that. So, keeping all this in mind and coming full circle with everything, you can kind of see where the Piper Business Performance System addresses all those things. And I have different programs that are involved in business performance, from low-level programs, which involve like just kind of workbook system type of things, going up into coaching and mentoring, and going to a higher end program, which is like a mastermind group where we have people of the same business caliber together, and we all share what we've learned and our problems, and it's extremely powerful to be involved. So if anybody is interested in learning the best way to be extremely successful, please reach out to me. I'm here for you. I'm here to answer any questions. And and Eva and Fabi have some information as well they could give you if you want to take that with you. I also want to talk about that I talk on several things, and I have a workshop coming up in the next couple weeks that has to do with success. It's the basics of success. It's the way that you have to condition yourself to be in the right mindset to be successful. I'm going to do this workshop in North Miami. It's going to start after the first of the year, but I have 2 introductory free sessions that are going to talk about what's involved in that workshop. One is going to be next week on the 12th, and one's going to be the week after on the 19th. So also, if you have any interest in that and understanding the basics of success and success principles, and it doesn't mean that it has to be business, because it could be your business life, it could be your personal life, and even if you work somewhere, by understanding the principles of success, it's going to make you more successful in the job where you work, and it's going to put you in the frame of mind to where you can move yourself to another level. So if you have any interest in being involved or looking more into the Success Workshop, please reach out for me on that as well. I also speak on some other topics, one which I did yesterday, which is Success Through the Power of Determination, which is a motivational and inspirational presentation. I also talk on entrepreneurism, of course, the Success Workshop, and I also have some medical things I talk on as well. So please reach out to me, and if you know anybody that might need a speaker for any type of event, be it a business, a chamber of commerce, a service organization, an association, anything at all, please keep me in mind for that as well. Once again, I thank you so much for coming, and that's my contact information. And if you want to reach out to me, I can use all the social media friends I can get. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay.